She's a wild child.
So today's book is A Wild Magic by Tamora Pierce. I've gone through Alana, I've gone through Becca Cooper, I have gone through Alana's daughter Ollie in Trickster's Choice and Trickster's Queen, and I figured let's just get the rest of the series done. I was hoping by this point that Numaire's series would be further developed, but it's been 4 years and we still don't have the second installment in his series, but we're forging ahead. My only problem is that I have today, which in your time is next week, I had to finish this book, Wolf Speaker, and his book in order to get things done or rolling for this series. So we'll see how successful I am. I don't know about you, I will tend to have more than one copy of a series. Recently it's been more like I have an ebook, I have an audiobook, I have a physical copy. But for this series, I have 2 full sets of the Alana series and the Wolf Speaker series, or I think it's called the Immortals series. Yes, Immortals. One that I write in and one that I didn't. And so I did pull this one out. I read my clean copy. And then I was like, you know what, Beth? You should go see what kind of notes you wrote, because I simply cannot decide what point of view these series were written in. I had not done much writing at all, but my younger, smarter, freshly out of school self had written third person omniscient. So apparently that's what my younger, smarter self came to the conclusion of. So that's what we're going with, is that officially Pierce wrote third person omniscient. I feel like it's a bit schizophrenic. I feel like it opens a lot of chapters with omniscient, but then once we actually get into the chapters, it is third person. We are going to chalk that up to the fact that these were written in the 90s, that Alana was written in the 80s, and things were different. I still think Alana was a stronger female character, if only because she had more of an end game in mind, whereas with Wild Magic, Dane shows up on the scene without much direction. In Wild Magic, we open up with this young girl, 13 years old, Dane, or Veralidaine Sarrasri, Dane. She approaches this woman named Anua, at least in my head that is how it's pronounced, so that's what we're gonna go with. And Anua is in charge of the horses for the riders in Tortal. And so she is on her yearly pilgrimage to get horses, because the Tortalans have their official army, but then they have this smaller group of riders who kind of protect smaller areas of the realm. And they are the Queen's own. They are the ones that include men and women. It is about time for a new group to come through, and therefore they need horses. Dane has an affinity for animals, and so she approaches Anua. Spoiler, she's harboring a secret. And her secret is that her family had been killed by raiders, and that she had gone mad in the aftermath. And that she, as I said, has an affinity for animals, and what it turns out to be is wild magic. So in the Alana series, we're introduced to Gifted, and they are people that have magic. Wild magic is different kinds of magic. In her case, it connects her to what are called the people, which are animals. She has this assumption and view of herself as not being good enough because she does not have magic. She does not know who her father is, but she just feels inadequate because she does not have the magic that she thinks people should have. And she does not understand that her affinity for animals is its own kind of magic. We open this book with her approaching Anua. Anua is like, yes, you can be my assistant. Help me get these horses back to Tortal. And then along the road, they encounter this hawk, and it is being pursued by something called Storm Wings. They are immortals, and immortals have been popping up when they haven't been seen in 400 years. Anua is like, it's super duper important that we go save that hawk. turns out the hawk is actually one of the most powerful mages in the realm, and his name is Numair Salmaline. He had been a spy, spying on not necessarily an enemy of Tortal, but a guy who didn't really like the king and queen and may have been in cahoots with the emperor of Carthage. It does turn out that's exactly what this guy was doing. Numair had gotten caught. He'd been drugged in his frenzy. He turned into a hawk and then was being chased by these Stormwings. Dane was able to rescue him, but she's like, there is something not right with this bird. This is not a normal bird. She realizes, like, I can't save this bird. Anua then contacts Alana, and Alana is close enough that she comes, and because she is powerfully gifted, she's able to bring Numair out of his transformation. Numair takes up this mantle of teaching Dane how to use and harness her wild magic. In this, it is teaching her how she's communicating with animals. Like, and this is something that I thought was super problematic. So, okay, first, the biggest problem, again, is the writing. It's very, very basic. The thing that I have seen in Alana is continued here, in that characters tend to be flawless despite their flaws. So Dane, who has no proper education, who has been shunned from her own community, who has all of this deep, dark backstory, like, I can't decide if she is a naive, shy, young country girl, or if she's a very brassy, I'm not going to do what you say because of all of the tragedy that I don't want to talk about, 13-year-old who acts like a 27-year-old. With all of that, and all of her insecurities, all of these like big, important people who she consistently points out do not behave the way that they should behave for their status in life, are like, oh my gosh, of course we accept you and we love you, and da da. And I was just like, I wanted some reality in this situation. I wanted some grit. I wasn't getting it. It's just like, oh yes, I know I've only known Dane for a week, but we can trust her with our deepest, darkest secrets. Let's wink at each other. Let's nudge each other. Like, it was very sickly sweet. It was hard to handle at times. And then there's just other little things, like the way that Pierce will refer to her characters. Like, she consistently refers to Dane as the girl. Then the girl would either act like a child or she would act like an adult. This pronoun for her, I couldn't handle this moniker. Where was I before I got off course? I don't know, but we're going to continue moving on and maybe I'll come back to it. Oh, I know what I was going to go for is, in the beginning, I guess my favorite word today is affinity. She has an affinity for animals. She can get them to do what she wants in ways that other, basically, like, horse handlers can't. She has a communication style all her own. It's like she's actually communicating. Like, I can talk to my sister's dog all day. He is going to react to what he knows, not necessarily because he understands me, but because that is what he was trained to understand. Like, he's never going to answer me back when I tell him about my day. Like, he does not comprehend that. But if I say treat, he's like, what? But we don't get this sense that Dane is actively communicating. It's almost like, I'm going to tell this horse to behave, and I'm going to talk to them like I have an expectation that they will behave, but I'm not actually expecting this horse to talk back. Yet, this is what then starts happening. I thought it was inconsistent, just like Dane's characterization herself was inconsistent, and it wasn't because she had a better understanding of her wild magic. It almost felt like Pierce had a better understanding of what she wanted, of the relationship she wanted between Dane and these animals, and that she had a better understanding of what wild magic was. They finally reach Tortal, and Dane is like super overwhelmed. And here's one of those instances that I was just like, bleh. Dane, who has basically never had a friend in her life because she's so different, she gets to her first meal with all these new trainees. She's like, I'm not gonna sit at the head table. I don't blame her. So I'm just gonna go sit by myself. And the next thing you know, like these two like uber friendly trainees, there's like, hey, what's up? Let's sit with you. Let's be BFFs forever. This is the crux of my problem. There's too many smiles. There's far too much acceptance, far too little reality. Or even when she starts working with these trainees, it did not take very long for her to be shy and unsure of herself, to be like, now I'm bellowing at everybody. Like, I get it. When you start something new, that is how you feel. But there's usually a longer progression from what she had. But it wasn't even like this was her nature. I guess maybe that's a better way of going at it, is her nature is to be reserved, not to take charge. Okay, that's not entirely true either. Like, you get her in her element, and yes, she's right there. But from what we've been given so far, is she has been knocked down so much. Her learned nature is not to be aggressive. So for her, over the course of one day, go from like, I'm too afraid to speak up, to like, now I have my own bellow. It was problematic for me. All comes down to the fact of time. This one was better than Alana in the mere fact that she didn't try to cover too much. In the first Alana book, she covered like 4 years. This book was like 6 months maybe. At the same time, it felt rushed. It felt like Pierce really needed to get Dane to a certain point so that she could do what she needed to do at the end of the book. We are at the training facility, and Numair is teaching Dane how to meditate, because this way she will be able to organize her thoughts, her mind. He's teaching her the anatomy of animals so that she can get into the animal using this wild magic, so that she can then heal them from the inside out, versus like, let me get some stitching thread and a splint. Let's figure out what your range is to hear and talk to animals, not physically talking to animals, but to understand that you're talking to them. It was very jumbled for me. It was very rushed for me in how she gets there, and all of a sudden it's like I have this far different grasp on my magic, and like now we are getting the idea that her magic has much bigger boundaries than even she knew, because there's one day that she's meditating and she decides to try something different and to connect on a deeper level. She starts communing with the horses out in the field, and she begins to turn into a horse. She loses herself, which is what had happened when her family was killed, because then she hooks up with this wolf pack in an effort to track down the bandits and kill the bandits, and she basically goes feral. She loses her human self. This is the thing that she fears the most about using her magic. And then she has this instance in which she's communing with the horses. Cloud, her horse, is realizing what's happening and like breaks down the door to knock her out of her trance, where she already has hooves. And I'm like, so nobody noticed the hooves when the horse broke down the door? Like, they disappeared that quickly? We get further into this series and it doesn't happen that quickly. From that point on, she basically is lying to Numair about her efforts. There's this other character called the Badger. So, you know, there's the immortals, like the Stormwings, that can be killed, and then there are the immortals, like the first male and female of any kind of creature, or like the gods. And so the first Badger is now coming to her because he knows her dad, and I guess he is tasked with looking out for her. And to some capacity, these gods and immortals see the future and they see what's coming. And so he is like, I need to make sure Dane is ready to face what is coming. He gets very mad at her because she is not progressing. He encourages her to tell her human friends why she is not doing what she's supposed to be doing. Numair's like, that's all. So he puts like this barrier, this safeguard in between her true self and her wild magic. So it is time for the trainees to go to training camp, which is at Pirate Swoop, which is where Alana and her husband George live. This is something I don't get. We have a lot of characters and not a lot of book, which means we do not develop characters and situations that the way we should. Skipping a little ahead, just to go back, we get to Pirate Swoop and everybody gets the day off. And the next thing we know, one of kind of like an antagonist to Dane, even though we don't see this girl, her name is Zelda. We don't really see her too much. We get like 2 passing mentions of her. Enough to know she's not the nicest of people. And she's like, yeah, peace out, I quit. And I'm like, so you traveled, what, 2 weeks to get here, and then on your day off you're like, yeah, I'm done? I was like, I don't get it. What did you do that changed your mind? We are on the road to Pirate Swoop, and Dane is learning a great deal about the world around her, about her own magical abilities. This is when she first gets experience healing animals from the inside out. But her first time at the ocean, she goes in and she hears whales, and she's like, what in the world is that? So she's trying to communicate with the whales, and a sea lion mistakes her as being a rival and takes her out. She almost drowns, but she's saved, and this is that point where she learns that she needs to be more careful. So then 2 things happen. One is she is trying to find the whales again. So she's tired because she had healed an animal along the road. And so she sits down and she's like, I'm really tired, but I want to commune with the whales. And so one thing about the meditation is they slow down their heart rate, they slow down their breathing, all that kind of stuff. She doesn't understand that she's actually stopping her heart, and she kills herself in her attempts to push all of those distractions aside. She goes, I guess, like the other realm, essentially. And she sees her mom with this dude with like antlers in his hair and like super dark skin. Alana brings her back to life. On her way back to her own body, she encounters a stormwing. At this point, they realize that stormwings are up and down the coast watching them. They cannot figure out why, but that's what's happening. And then they're at the village that accompanies Pirate Swoop, and it is absolutely empty because griffins have appeared. She is able to speak with these griffins and basically like forge a treaty and forge a peace treaty. They make it to Pirate Swoop, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, Dane, you're the best thing since sliced bread. They are not there very long before the stormwings disappear and the enemy does appear. I don't know. I think the one thing that Pierce does well is when she actually gets into the action, she's very, very good at it. It's extremely entertaining, along with all of her magic work. She does a great job at setting and world building and making things happen. The problem is the interim. The next thing we know, Alana is called away because ogres have appeared, and this was just a ruse. The Stormwings have been watching because Queen Fayette and her 2 oldest children have also come to Pirate Swoop, and so the Stormwings have then gone off to whoever they report to, who we believe is Emperor Ozorn from Carthage. The next thing we know, a spell has been placed around the surrounding vicinity in which people cannot use their magic, and war barges have appeared. So they're like, what are we gonna do? It's not Ozorn, but it is somebody, so it's not even the Carthax, it is the Copper Isles. So it looks like the Copper Isles have aligned with Carthage, and this was something I didn't get, and I thought it was a really poor excuse. In this book, war is only declared if like the ruling authorities write it down on paper. So an act of war does not mean that there is war. It's just an act of war. I don't know. Is that how it really works? I don't think so. I feel like the act of war is a declaration of war itself. Please correct me if I'm wrong. The demand is for Fayette and the prince and the princess. And then we get the super sappy moment of the princess being like, oh, this is all my fault. She's like 8. And she's like, oh, it's all my fault. And Dane's like, oh, no, of course it's not your fault. They're the bad guys. They did this of their own free will. Like, blame them. There's nothing they can do. There's like 600 enemy soldiers surrounding them. There's all these war barges. Nobody can use their magic except for who? Dane. Because wild magic is not like regular magic. The dampening spells don't affect her the same way. So now we have this whole like, Dane is so soft-hearted. Like, why did 14-year-old me love her so much? Like, I was naming my own characters after her. I guess it's because the writing is more in line with a younger mindset. It's not a bad book. I would really like to see Pierce rewrite this series and the Alana series with more finesse. But anyways, because she's so kind-hearted, like there's been this running theme of she can't control her magic all the time. Hence, it's wild magic. And so there are going to be instances where animals are going to come to her aid whether she wants them to or not, or means them to or not. So while they're under siege, all of the animals in the surrounding area are like, we want to fight, we want to fight, we want to fight. She's like, oh no, don't, if you die, that'll be terrible. And at one point, someone's like, dude, you gotta let them fight. If we think about it, this is our army. They're gonna fight, and some people might get hurt. If I do not let them fight, I'm being selfish. You do not let them fight, you are being selfish. So what Dane realizes is, okay, what I can do is I can show them how to fight, how to give us an advantage, and that would be ruin their food supplies, ruin their weapons, disable them in small ways. It's really effective, but the enemy has inadvertently brought a dragon over from the divine realms, and she is ticked. I say inadvertently, it's a little confusing, but they brought her over and they have then given her the idea that it was Dane and her people who did it. Therefore, they're the ones that she needs to come after. This dragon is super ticked, not only because she was taken from her home, but because she's pregnant, she was going into labor, and then being brought over, killed the baby. Dane is able to kind of talk her down from the ledge, but she also heals her. The dragon goes off, has her baby. Dane, like, they realize that they're in trouble. You know, no matter what the animals have done, no matter what they've done, like, they are outnumbered, they are in trouble. She goes down to the sea because when you are depleted, this is what she learned after the whole whale thing. When you are depleted of energy and magic, go and submerge yourself in something cold. Go and submerge yourself in some salt water. It will reinvigorate you. So she's like, I'm gonna see if I can get in touch with those whales again, and maybe they will help us. The whales refuse, and this is the one time that I thought this really weird writing style helped. If you've ever seen The Never-Ending Story, you know when Sebastian is on the flying dog. Sorry, I keep wanting to call him a Treyu. That is not a Treyu, but the flying dog, the really creepy thing. And they're like flying over things, and you are getting this overview of the entire land. That's kind of what I'm getting in my mind. What I thought was silly was that Dane is plumbing the depths of this ocean as far as she can go, and she's like going days and days and days worth apparently out. And so she's like, where did that crop of islands come from? And I'm like, you're searching far and wide. You are very uneducated. There are going to be crops of islands you've never seen. She stumbles across a kraken, which is probably my favorite part. I really enjoyed this kraken. Apparently the kraken had been missed when all of these immortals had been sealed in the divine realms. And he's like, those whales were sissies. Do you need help? I will help you. And she's realizing about how far she's traveled magically. And she's like, I just don't think that you're going to make it in time. He's like, oh, you leave it up to me. She comes back to herself and she's like, what have I just done? Which again, I didn't understand why Pierce went in this direction. Why have Dane, and why Dane even thought to go that far out? It's a mystery to me, except for the fact that she was just searching for anything she could find. But on another hand, it almost was like she knew she was searching for something, that there was something out there. I don't know. She comes back to herself, and the dragon brings her back to where she needs to be, and it helps fight for them, only to be killed by some magical flame. Dane is like in tears because she is so soft-hearted, which I must just be really cold-hearted because I'm so tired of these really, really sappy characters. Overall, I do not understand Dane. Who is she? What is her growth trajectory? I feel like we're going here to here to here to here to here. Like, I want this with a little bit of this. You know, like anyways, very schizophrenic in my opinion. Now the dragon's gone and they're like, what in the world? Only for like in the literal next breath, her friends are like, what is that? And the Kraken's like tentacles are coming out of the water. And in my head, there's 4 war barges. And the dragon has destroyed 3 of them. Then for all these tentacles to be coming out of the water and like overturning boats and destroying things, I'm like, there were obviously more than 4 war barges, and the dragon definitely only destroyed like 1 of them. This is another issue that I take with Pierce's writing, in that she rushes to get where she needs to be, encompassing a lot, only to just like wrap it up super quickly. I mean, literally, I think they had 1, maybe 2 chapters of them like, we were done for, and then in 3 pages, it's 1. That's a huge problem for me, because I'm like, where's the development here? I mean, I know there's an entire series. There's 3 more books after this one to approach the overarching issue. Not much actually happened from the point where they realize that they're penned in without a prayer to the Kraken coming. And this is something I also didn't understand. They realize that they're surrounded. A Stormwing brings them a note declaring the intention, not the war, declaring the intention, saying, we want the queen and her kids, otherwise we're gonna attack and you have like a day and a half. So they're like, absolutely not. So then the Stormwings start attacking them. Like, what happened to a day and a half? The Stormwings start attacking them, and then the mages start attacking them from the war barges. Like, what happened to a day and a half? Only for then the Stormwings to lose interest because there was enough dead bodies, because that's what they do, is they feed off fear in like dead bodies. Then, you know, they lose interest, and the mages are like, okay, we're just gonna like pull back a minute. And only for like that day and a half to pass, and Dane and her company reapproached with like, what's your decision? So, you know, they're sitting there for maybe not necessarily an entire day, but they're sitting there for a decent amount of time strategizing, and nothing's happening. Granted, nothing much can happen because they're cut off from all form of help, which is when Dane, you know, does her thing. Nothing is happening. And then as soon as it does happen, it's done in like an hour. Maybe not an hour, but in a couple pages. And so it lifts you up because it's so exciting, just to kind of let you down because it's over. This is what I still don't understand, the whole Kraken thing, because his intention very well could have been, well, I helped you out, and now I'm gonna hang out, and I'm gonna cause issues for you, but we don't know. But the assumption is, what have I done, and how are we gonna get rid of him? For me, he's just a comical character, which is why I'm not seeing the greater issue here with him, and he's super dangerous. But apparently, Numair and Alana like frightened the living daylights out of this Kraken enough to make him peel back so quickly that he took all the water with him, and Alana had to bring the water back, which is just, it's so comical in my brain that I'm like, this Kraken was not a danger to anybody. He was just like super excited about destruction. And then he was just gonna leave when all the excitement was over. Dane, she wakes back up. She is like, oh my gosh, I need to go get this baby dragon. I've gotta go save him, he's dying. So she goes, she saves the dragon. She's like, so Anua, I don't think I can hang on with you much longer. Like, now my responsibility is to this baby dragon. And then what do you think happens? But everybody's like, well, we wanna give you a home. Because that was the theme, is she was homeless. She didn't have a family. And now everybody and their mother wants her to stay with them. And so it's just like, I like it. I like the acceptance. I like where this theme went, but at the same time, because I take such issue with the apple pie-ness of it all, it was a foregone conclusion that everybody was going to start fighting over Dane. King and Queen want her to live with them. Alana, her husband, want her to live with them. Anua naturally wants her to be with. And I was just like, I love it, but it's a lot. That's basically the book. It's super simple. I'm surprised that I was able to milk as much out of this review as I could. The only thing I did leave out is that when Dane went crazy, the villagers tried to kill her. Great backstory. Not enough time given to it. And in many ways, it served as an opportunity for Dane to consistently say, woe is me, which got on my nerves because I was so tired of her feeling sorry for herself. I love the idea of a deep, dark secret, but I didn't particularly care for the way that it was executed overall. When I was 14, absolutely no issues. When I was 21, don't remember having any issues. Now that I'm way past 21, lots of issues. There we go. What do you think? What do you think of this series as a whole? Have you read it as an adult versus as a young person? And have your opinions like mine changed? I will see you later.